With the extent of human innovation and technology, we've managed some incredible things. We can replace organs. We can fly into outer space. We can traverse the bottom of the ocean. We can even produce meat made up entirely of plant material. We, however, still cannot conquer the final frontier. The darkness. The places that no light ever reaches are still beyond our control. I know that the night sky is so polluted with light that most people in the country have never really experienced a truly star-filled night, but there are still places in which no light ever permeates. There are patches of darkness where even God dares not interfere. Some things that remain hidden from us, hidden from the world, hidden from everything. They want to stay that way. I fear the dark because I have no way of knowing what's hiding in the dark. I know it might sound stupid and childish, but I fear the dark. I'm not ashamed of that. When I first moved here, I kept hearing stories about a nocturnal monster that stalks under the cover of night, drinking blood and terrorizing everyone who is unfortunate enough to come across this ghoul. I thought this was nonsense, nothing more than a folktale about a vampire. I don't pay the stories much attention. There were no blood-sucking reanimated carrions walking around here, only blood-sucking mosquitoes. The stories have proven themselves to be wrong, of course. There are no blood-sucking corpses walking around looking for crimson sustenance in the dark around these parts. There is something here, though. Something that likes to stay hidden under the guise of night. Hidden from the watchful eye of the sun and the reflective lens of the moon. A thing that makes no sense to the human mind. A thing that shouldn't be. It exists, however, and it spends its days crawling in the shadows, occasionally scaring the locals and devouring their livestock. 10 years ago, at night, the moonlight would wash half of my bedroom, illuminating it in a beautiful silver glitter. This cold light of the night was such a sight to behold. It was soothing and almost hypnotic. The platinum-tinted shade of my walls and floor helped me fall asleep. The area had always been quiet and serene, it appears. I like it that way. I was never the type for the noisy city life. One night, I woke up to the sound of faint squawking. At first, I thought it was just my head playing tricks on me, thinking it was a part of my dream in which reality bled into imagination. I ignored the noise and attempted falling back into the deeper stages of sleep. The squawking persisted, however, slowly becoming clearer and more refined. It started sounding like a dog whining and a child crying combined into one. The sound gave chills. I opened my eyes to see nothing of note in front of me. Thinking I'm just imagining things, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes again, and the noise died down. I was jolted awake by the sound of something trying to expel something out of its throat. This very distinct sound. My mind started racing and goosebumps ran down my body. I shifted my gaze across the wall I was facing from top to bottom. Nothing was out of place. The blacked by darkness white paint, the shed with my phone and keys on it, and a picture of my mother. I miss seeing her face now. Next, I traced my gaze around the floor. Everything seemed to be in place. My slippers, the tiles, the carpet, all seemed perfectly normal. A high-pitched, almost swine-like cry and the shuffling of canine claws on the floor. That's all it took for me to shift my gaze to what stood, or sat, in front of me. It was partially lit by the moonlight. My mind was racing at 300 miles per hour, attempting to digest the information fed into my brain through my eyes. It was so absurd and so unexpected. I still can't wrap my head around that picture of the silver glimmer of moonlight covering half of my room in a beautiful platinum shade, contrasted with this naked, pallid parody of a human body under my window. My heartbeat rose as I saw that thing, and it kept rising. Breathing became almost hard to accomplish when I looked at the thing. It had its back turned to me. It was like this skinny, humanish thing with a very defined musculature. It was hairless, save for a long mane running from the head to the bottom of its back along the middle, some dark color. I couldn't make out the head because it was hidden in the shadows, tucked away from the light of the moon. It's pretty dark out here. There are barely any artificial lights in here, so the nights become pitch black during the cloudy nights. I sat there, in my bed, trying to process the situation. A lump of saliva had built up in my throat, and I couldn't even bring myself to swallow it. The apparition in my room had paralyzed me. I just sat there and stared at the almost lupine thing that somehow had crawled into my room. In turn, the creature just crouched there and skulked, sobbed. I don't even know. The sound was so bizarre and made no sense to me anymore at that point. A crying of a child, yelping of a dog, shrills of a swine, all in one, in an ever-growing frequency. I feel kind of jittery just thinking about it now. We must have sat there for a few long minutes before I managed to even decide to pull myself out of bed and do something. Quietly, I pushed aside my blanket and shuffled my feet to the floor before standing up as quietly as I could. Never have I taken my gaze away from the strange thing in the room. Then I slowly walked to the light switch and grabbed the door handle. The idea was to turn on the lights, hoping this thing would freak out at the sudden influx of light and run out of my room, closing the door behind me to get something to deal with it in the case that it turned out to be aggressive. With an audible gulp, I flipped the switch. Bright white light flooded my bedroom, stunning even me for the moment. The thing in front of me definitely was not human, and it was livid. I could see its elongated, almost horse-like head. The creature ran on all fours from side to side, banging its body against the walls and my bed, emitting this awful sound between a shriek and a growl that fluctuated in frequency. I opened the door, letting a sliver of darkness from the hall back into my room. The beast must have registered the change, and with a horrible, vibrating cry that sounded like nails being grinded on a metal board, it ran straight at the opening. I'm pretty sure it just hated the light. The eyes of that thing, placed at the front of its freakishly elongated, wrinkled, ugly mug. They were partially covered by flailing strands of fur from its dark mane. I could see them, however. They had an emerald shade to them, like those of deep-sea creatures. The beast ran in my direction, at the door. It must have been 4 or 5 feet tall on all fours. It ran like a crazed dog. That thing was far larger than I first thought. I didn't have much time to react to its charge as it knocked me off my feet. I fell down, hitting my head twice as the last thing I saw was the bright lights in the room, slowly being eaten away by darkness. My head started spinning and my ears rang like crazy, even though I could still hear the creature's claws scraping against the floor tiles and its awful cries. I hate and fear the dark, and no amount of technology is going to spare me from a life filled with absolute dread, because I am surrounded in perpetual darkness. I lost my eyesight as a result of brain trauma from that fall. Thankfully, with the extent of human innovation and the technological advances we've made over the years, being blind isn't a death sentence. After all, speech-to-text even allows me to record this on a written document. We still, however, haven't gotten to the point where we can say we've conquered the darkness. The shadows remain untamed, While I've come to terms with being in perpetual darkness somewhat, occasionally, in the dead of night, I wake up into a panic attack, losing control of my motor skills right after hearing that faint skulking and the shuffling of claws on the floor.